New York City will close the Rikers Island jail facility.
Welcome to the Morning Stretch with Tony Herbert. I am your host, Tony Herbert. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're here to talk a little bit about Rikers Island. And actually, the individuals you saw were the leading proponents behind closing Rikers Island. They were invited to today's conversation, but unfortunately weren't able to attend. However, I do have a distinguished person in the studio with me right now, and I'd very much to welcome Mr. Elias Hussamuddin, president of COBA, Corrections Officers Benevolent Association.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Now, so question, real quick, Elias. I know that we've talked about a lot of things over the course of time. Why is closing Rikers Island such a big issue?
I don't really know the answer to that.
We've rallied. We've had. There's a lot of stuff going on.
I've said it in the past. I continue to say it. It's a land grab. Basically, they're not trying to shut down Rikers or close Rikers. They're trying to reuse Rikers. Mm-hmm. Rikers is 420 acres of land. And unfortunately, the governor, the mayor, and whoever else wants to use this land for something.
Well, why shouldn't it be closed?
Because it's actually the best suited place to have jails. There are 10 jails on Rikers Island. Mm-hmm. Rikers Island, wherever you go in the country, most jails are located in remote areas. They're not located smack dab in the middle of a community. You don't come out of your house and next door to you is a jail with barbed wires and all kind of buses and lawyers and people coming back and forth.
But there's a lot of argument with regards to the violence. I mean, even you yourself said it's very violent. Why? Why would it be necessary to just close it if it's violent?
Well, see, we keep using words like close. You're not talking about closing anything.
Right.
Basically, you're talking about relocating. So if you relocate the jails off of Rikers Island, is that going to stop the violence?
Now, how would that process take place? How would they relocate, individuals from this particular, I mean, Rikers seems like the best place for people to feel safe. I mean, not in my community. I don't want a jail in my community.
It is the best place. Look, as far as them saying that they want to spend $10.6 billion to open 4 jails inside or in the community, that's just doesn't really make sense, and it's not going to do anything to answer the question or the problem that we're having. The problem we're having is that the violence in the jails is not being addressed. It's not being addressed because we have a mayor who has refused to pay attention to law and order. The reason why we have such a high rate of violence in the jail is because they've eliminated the tools and the things that we use in order to keep the violence down and at a minimum. Don't say that you have to shut it down because correction officers have created a culture of violence, when we know that everything that you're sending us is violent. When you arrest 24 gang members in the Bronx or 30 gang members in Brooklyn, what are you arresting them for?
Right.
Gun violence, assault, felony assault, murder, drugs. This is what you're arresting them for. So you're sending us violence, and then you're accusing us of creating a culture of violence. When, as we know, as it's been said, that prison is a microcosm of what is going on in the larger society or community. Mm-hmm. Well, if there's violence in Brooklyn, violence in the Bronx, and you're arresting the violent people and you're sending them to jail or Rikers Island, what do you think you're going to have on Rikers Island or in the New York City jail system? So basically, they want this island. They want to expand LaGuardia's runway.
Well, you spoke to that. You said it was a land grab.
It's a land grab.
Okay.
And they want it, but they don't know how to say that they want it. They just need to have somebody that's a villain, and they decide to make correction officers the villain or the reason why they say that they have to close Rikers Island. Again, we need to stop saying close Rikers Island. You want to reuse Rikers Island. You want to do something else with Rikers Island. You're not looking to close 420 acres of property, prime real estate in New York City.
But I'm also understanding there's some health issues on Rikers with regards to the landfill or whatever that might be.
This is something that people have been saying for a long time, as far as those issues is concerned. The union, we ourselves have done independent studies as far as that argument is concerned, and we haven't been able to confirm that one way or the other. Look, we could come up with 50,000 different reasons why they want to shut down Rikers. The bottom line is that it's a land grab. The bottom line is they want to reuse it. The bottom line is they had Judge Lippman, they commissioned him, he did the report. In the report, he said that if they shut down Rikers or move the jails and give Rikers to LaGuardia, that they can increase the annual income for the state of New York by $17 billion a year. They said that they can bring in an additional 12 million people a year. Basically, LaGuardia will become, we'll have 2 international airports instead of just one. The deals have been made, they want it. Our attitude is, listen, we need safe jails.
Right.
For us, it doesn't matter whether a jail is in a borough, because the violence in the borough jails is just as bad as the violence in the jails on Rikers Island.
Right, nobody's speaking to that. I mean, everybody's focused on Rikers based on what's being put out there. So,
Right.
Okay.
Well, look, at the end of the day, they want the island, and they've gone about talking about so many different things, so many different reasons: mass incarceration, school to prison pipeline, bail reform. They've talked about 100 different things, but no one is actually talking about what's really important, and that is safe jails. Whether your jail, we have a jail in Brooklyn on Atlantic Avenue. An officer gets beat down, stabbed, pulled downstairs. That's Brooklyn.
Right.
Manhattan jail, the Tombs in Manhattan, an officer gets slashed, 7 stitches across his neck. Those are borough jails. So what are you saying? That by shutting down the 9 jails on Rikers Island, it's going to create safer jails? The problem is no one wants to address the true issue, and the true issue is safer jails. The other issue is, why do you wait until someone's in jail to decide that you want to invest in their future? Why do you wait until they get to jail to decide that you want to give them an education? You want to give them an iPod. You want to give them job training.
Well, isn't this what the advocacy organizations are doing at the Board of Corrections, where you guys go to state your case?
Yes, I've never seen a time when advocates, people who call themselves community advocates, public, whatever they are, advocating for new jails. I've never seen a situation where advocates say, we need new jails. We want to take $10.6 billion and build new jails. They're not saying that they want to take $10.6 billion and create more summer youth programs. They're not saying that they want to increase the mental health facilities in the community. They're not saying that they want to increase the training programs. None of that. They're saying we want to build new jails. The union position is East Elmhurst, Queens, Rikers Island, is the best situation, the best place for jails to be. It's in a remote area. You can get to Rikers Island. They say, well, it's a hardship for people to get there. It's not. On Saturday, if your grandmother lives in Corona and you live in the Bronx, what do?
COBRA President Elias Hussain-Medine. We're going to come right back. Hold on, I want to talk about some more stuff when we come back off this break.
I think Rikers Island is a blot on the soul of our city. And it stains not only the city, but everything that Rikers touches. Anything to do with the criminal justice system, I think, is damaged by this mass incarceration model.
From a communications standpoint, we wanted to identify where the really controversial issues were going to be, and then work to spend the year putting stories out there that would soften the ground. Everyone knows Rikers is terrible, but when you hear it first person from these voices, it really makes a difference.
There is no adaptive reuse of the buildings on Rikers Island. They cannot be reused for anything. So they need to be demolished. And the other was that there's no access to the island.
We're back with Elias Hussain-Medine, president of the Corrections Officers Benevolent Association. And actually, the video you just saw was Judge Lippman and his commission, who said Rikers Island should be closed, and I'm reading their statement, because people don't have access to their families. They're detached. They also said no new jail should be built there. You accused them of the land grab. We talked about that. But why do you keep saying that? And how do we answer and address this whole thing about what they're putting us, with this mental health thing that they're talking about?
There's an old rap song where they say it's all about the Benjamins. I think people need to actually just pay attention. I mean, you have influential advocates. Example, Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, provided that organization you invited $6 million to continue to fight to shut down Rikers Island. What is Facebook's interest in shutting down Rikers Island? What's Twitter's interest? What's the American Express interest? What are the interests of all these influential people who are given this money? Judge Littman's committee consisted of 27 people. 2 of them had corrections experience. The rest of them were real estate developers and architects.
Real estate
So,
developers.
real estate developers. One of them was the guy who built the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. So, I'm not quite sure. I think it's all about the Benjamin. That's called a land grab. At the end of the day, I'll keep saying the same thing. They want the island. They're not trying to shut this island down. In the judges' commission, they talked about using it for a greenhouse. They talked about using it for a variety of different things, but the one main thing that they talked about doing was LaGuardia. And if you go to any airport today, who do you see? American Express, Twitter,
Corporate.
Facebook.
Yeah.
You see all type of advertising, everybody that benefits. At the end of the day, I keep saying that, but this is not about black or Latino people. In his commission, he talked about bringing black and Latinos closer to their
Right.
families. Quite frankly, you could take a city bike and ride to Rikers Island. You could take an Uber and go to Rikers Island. You could take the train or the bus. This is not, Rikers Island is in East Elmhurst, Queens. It's not in Canada, and it's not upstate. All of these arguments that they're presenting they're fake. All of these arguments are fake. Basically, you want this 420 acres. Don't use correction officers as the scapegoat for why you need to take it. Don't say that we have created a culture of violence inside the New York City jails. We're calling for the mayor to reinstate punitive segregation. Some people call that solitary confinement, which is not. Punitive segregation is one of the ways that correction officers have historically, one of the things that we've historically used to keep the violence down, because we get the opportunity to segregate or separate the violent inmates from the rest of the inmates, from the correction officers, from the civilians, for those of us who have to work or find ourselves behind bars.
But you have proponents and advocates who are saying that punitive segregation, which I think you're speaking to, causes brain damage. How do we speak to that?
We have no issue. We know what solitary confinement is, and we know that solitary confinement can do damage to people, but that's not what we have. That is not what we're proposing. Again, this is just a fake argument to push the cause of shutting down Rikers. They continue to appeal to people's emotion. Again, like I said, when they talk about mass incarceration, when they talk about the school to prison pipeline, all of these things are like buzzwords for African American Latino communities to say, oh my God, what are they doing to us? When the reality is, look, last year we took custody of 55,000 New Yorkers who were turned over to our custody. The average one of them go home in 2 months. 83% of the people in our custody stay with us no more than 2 months. So for all of this brain damage and all of these things that they're talking about, there's no real basis for it. There's no real basis for it. Again, we'll just keep coming back to the same thing.
Well, let's go back to the safety thing. You know, the violence issue, because I know that there's another piece that you guys are looking at with regards to the body scanners. What is the issue with that? Why can't you guys get body scanners to make sure that, you know, people are not carrying, you know, this contraband, they call it?
Because basically we have people who are now responsible for running jails that have no idea of what it means to run a jail. Quite frankly, if you listen to the advocates and you listen to everybody, it's probably better to be in jail than it is to be home. You have a situation where you have more than 60,000 homeless people in the city of New York. 20,000 of them are kids. So here's this $10.6 billion, again, to build a beautiful jail where the inmates have flat screen TV, access to what you have here, iPads and all this type of stuff, and there are 20,000 homeless kids that don't even know where their next meal is going to come from. So again, we just have people who are playing the Jedi mind trick. They're doing everything to keep the focus or the attention of the voters off of what it is that they're really trying to do. Look, correction officers are not against reform.
Right.
Correction officers are not against somebody going to jail and coming home better than when they left. But at the end of the day, we are running a jail system. We're not mental health workers. We're not psychiatrists or psychologists. It's our job to keep them until the courts.
So what's the
call for
answer?
them.
How do we stop the violence?
Well, it's jail. You're never going to stop the violence. The best thing that you're going to do is what we've done over the last hundreds of years that we've been running jails. We're able to keep the violence down. But when you have a mayor who says that, who brags that he's the first in the nation to eliminate punitive segregation, and don't even understand that that pretty much makes him a fool, because obviously, what does he know that hundreds of other jail systems throughout the country don't know? No one else have eliminated punitive segregation. Even those who don't use it didn't eliminate it, because they know that that is one of the best tools when it comes to reducing the violence, of keeping the violence down. So we have a mayor who is actually the biggest advocate there is, to be honest with you. And again, I believe that we have to keep an eye on the influential advocates. Where's the money? Follow the money. Connect the dots. Basically, if the state is saying we're going to collect $17 billion annually additional. Remember now, we're operating right now with a $4.1 billion deficit. You have the governor who is calling for the closing of Rikers Island today. You have a mayor who's saying we could do it over 10 years. Why? Is it really about safety? Is it really about bringing Black and Latino people closer to their family? Hell, I'm Black. I don't want a jail in my community. You just said that you don't
Totally
want
not.
one in
Right,
yours. So at the end of the day, who are these people? They just found a spot in the South Bronx, Mott Haven.
Well, that's coming under fire right now. That's coming under fire.
Of all areas, they found the South Bronx. And what is the community saying?
No.
The community is saying, we don't want it. And guess what? It's their families, our families are the ones that's in the jail. They don't want it in their community, because jails in your community, it brings nothing. We talk about winners and losers. Who wins when a jail is built in the Black and Latino community? And who loses? We lose. For those of us who own our own homes, our property value go down. For those of us who have young children, we have to bring them out in the morning and walk past a jail to go to school, to take them, for us to go to work. We don't win. The community does not win with a jail. This is not Waukegan, New York. This is not upstate, where a jail
We built in the middle of nowhere, yeah.
the community.
The economy.
Might be the
Pretty much
only
the economy.
economy, and that's not what we have here.
Speaking about money, I want to come back. I want you to stay with us. I want to come back. I want to talk about the bail reform piece. I know that affects you as well. And we have another guest that's going to be joining us. So we'll be right back after this.
Bill de Blasio calling for bail reform in the wake of the death of NYPD officer Randolph Holder. The man charged with Holder's murder, Tyrone Howard, was in what's known as a drug diversion program, a program not meant for violent repeat offenders.
I'm a believer that when someone gave his life for us, as Officer Holder did, they cannot have died in vain. And some greater change, some greater good has to come out of it.
Howard's record includes 18 arrests for things like assault and robbery, 9 narcotic arrests, and police were looking for him for a September 1st East Harlem shooting. Instead of prison time, as prosecutors recommended last year, Howard was put in a drug diversion program.
That did endanger other folks, Dave. Let's be clear, drug dealing endangers people's lives.
In the future, the mayor wants the law to change so that judges can consider public safety in setting bail. And he wants a suspect's background considered when offering diversion programs. In addition, the mayor and many others say it's also unfair to lock up people at Rikers for small, petty crimes just because they can't afford a low bail.
We've seen many cases where people are just being thrown in Rikers without any reason or cause, and actually held in that system for years, waiting for trials. A lot of times people are thrown in because they don't have money to afford the bail to get out. So we've seen people that have stayed in prisons for like 2 years.
To date, the mayor was asked if it's fair, due process, to lock up a suspect even if they have not been convicted of a violent crime.
And that information was visible to the judge. So I absolutely believe in fundamental constitutional rights, but I also believe in common sense.
Governor Cuomo's plan, announced Wednesday to reform the bail system, was welcomed by advocates like Jonathan Littman.
I think the governor is to be applauded.
Littman, the state's former chief judge, who headed a commission that recommended closing Rikers Island, also praised Cuomo's plans to reform the process known as discovery by requiring prosecutors to turn over evidence to the defense much earlier in the process.
Welcome back. Elias and I are now joined by the president of the New York State Bail Bondsman Association, Miss Michelle Eskenazi. How's it going?
Nice to see you.
Great. So, I want to jump right in because I had a couple of questions. Elias and I have been talking. Explain to me, how do we get to understanding what this whole bail bonds thing is about? Why is it so important to you?
Well, they call it bail reform.
Okay.
They should be concentrating on homeless reform, but they're concentrating on something that they've branded the rhetoric of bail reform. So what they're saying is that indigent people languish in incarceration, and by virtue of that, they should wipe out private industry that's been operating since the inception of time in the United States of America and replace it with government bureaucracy.
But why is it needed?
It is not needed. It's absolutely a fallacy, but they're excellent at their branded rhetoric. It's very similar to what they're doing with Close Rikers Island, Close Rikers Island. They have no idea what they're doing. As a matter of fact, Judge Littman, who's in charge of it, has never tried a criminal case in his entire life.
Now, help me understand this. They're trying to get rid of someone having to get a bail. Why? I mean, isn't that supposed to be part of the penalization process?
Well, I will tell you that the governor's proposal and Senator Gianaris and Assemblyman Court's proposal indicates that if bail reform were to be passed, it would be mandatory release for all misdemeanor offenders and nonviolent offenders. Nonviolent crimes include endangering the welfare of an elderly person or a disabled person, desecrating a cemetery. Patronizing a minor for prostitution is a nonviolent crime. A sale of a controlled substance near school grounds, nonviolent crime. Soliciting support for an act of terrorism, nonviolent crime. Post 9/11, I don't know how warm and fuzzy that makes all New Yorkers, but all of those crimes would be gifted mandatory release.
Oh my gosh. And Elias, I think we had the conversation. So they're talking. This is the mayor's picture. He wants to get the jails down to 5,000 people so that he can actually close Rikers. How do we do that and not not release some of the most violent people, and even those that we're talking about right here?
Well, if you check out Judge Littman's report, in his report, just to piggyback on what Michelle was saying, he actually says in the report that they should consider releasing some inmates who are actually convicted or in jail for violent offenses. So these people are all over the place. They're talking about taking the average daily population from 9,000 to 5,000. The three facilities, jails that we have in the borough facilities together only hold up to 2,400 inmates. The new facilities that they're talking about building, the four, I don't even think that they have the capability of holding 5,000 inmates. The other thing is, look, there's a bigger problem, Tony. In 2017, they turned over 55,000 New Yorkers to the New York City Department of Corrections. The magic number is 41,000 of them had already been arrested that year from 2 to 9 times for a variety of crimes, including A felonies, B felonies, C felonies, so forth and so on. So again, I hate to keep saying this, I know it sounds funny, but here's the Jedi mind trick. Here's the playing the game with the public because they don't know or they don't understand. Like, for instance, if you're going to open 4 jails in the boroughs, what are you going to do with the more than 40,000 intakes that we get every year? Where's that going to be processed? Right. Is it going to be processed in the jail in the Bronx, in the jail in Brooklyn? Where are these 41,000 people going to go?
That's on average.
When you're that's yes. So when you're talking about putting a jail in the community, or in this, look, not in the community, in the Black and Latino community, because Judge Littman's report was very clear.
Right.
They want to put it in the Black and Latino.
Because they wanted to be close, so that apparently, I think that's what the report said. They wanted to make sure that people have better access to, to their family members.
They also want to make sure that if one of these guys actually escape, they'll have access to the community to do whatever it is that they want to do. I don't want to fearmonger or promote, but that's just the reality. Not too long ago, we had an inmate escape one of the jails on Rikers, but he never left the island. If that jail was sitting smack dab in the middle of people's homes and properties, where would he have gone?
Right.
And based on his particular crime, attempted murder or whatever it is, what are they going to do? Look, the reality is no one wants a jail in their community. I don't even want a precinct next to me. I don't want a firehouse. I don't want a school next to me. Why? Because it affects the quality of life. My parking, going, coming, 24 hours. Police precincts, firehouse, 24 hours. The jail is more 24 hours than a firehouse and a precinct. We have lawyers coming all day. We have visitors coming all day. We have inmates going and coming. 55,000 last year, and probably about the same amount this year. So there are a lot of things that they're not really saying to the people. Again, they want the island, and it's not about safety. It's not about the community. It's definitely not about Black and Latino.
You know, just before we introduced Michelle, we showed a video clip. Basically, it showed the breakdown of New York City's jails population, so it speaks directly to what you're saying. How do we get 40,000 people processed, and where? That should be alarming.
It really should be. I mean, Rikers Island has 10 jails. 9 of them are open. It has the ability to hold up to 25,000 inmates. Quite frankly, I don't know how they're going to bring this population down because crime is not going to go away.
Right.
And even if you don't arrest the guy who's smoking marijuana, don't arrest the guy who hopped the train, don't arrest the guy who
Peeing in the
urinates
street.
on, even if you don't arrest them, you still have a problem. There's still 40,000 or more people every year being arrested. And the deal is, the people who are being put in jail now, which is another reason for the spike in violence, are the violent ones. The ones who are being put in jail right now are the violent ones. So how do you deal with that?
Right.
And how do you deal with that without punitive segregation? How do you deal with that without stiffer or harsher penalties for when they break the rules? Because the problem is the 4 18-year-olds who attacked Correctional Officer John Safon, they were 18 years old. They were in jail for attempted murder, gun charge, felony assault. They're in jail. They're still committing crimes. Yes, they get rearrested. Yes, the Bronx District Attorney remands them. Yes, the judges are now giving them consecutive sentences. Problem is when we put them on the bus and bring them back to the city jails or to Rikers Island, because of their age and because of what this mayor has done by eliminating punitive segregation, nothing else happens to them. So there's nothing to stop them from continuing to commit crimes.
But so it comes back to you with regards to bail. So, you know, a crime is committed, but they're saying release these people without doing bail? Because I know we spoke about an algorithm or something to that effect that was put in place.
Well, the algorithm is something that they're using nationally, but what happened is in the state of New Jersey, one of the offenders was released on an algorithm who had 22 convictions for guns and went out in the middle of the day and killed a young black man at 7-Eleven. So what happened was the mother of that crime victim sued the state of New Jersey. So when the governor found out about that, he pulled the algorithm out of bail reform and just made it straight up mandatory release. So what's actually happening is it's not really a culture of violence in the jail. It's a culture of rewarding recidivism by elected officials. And that's what nobody's really talking about. That's the actual conversation. So all of these elected officials, whether they be in the city council or the Senate or the assembly, they are advocating for the rights of criminal offenders. We have laws in the land that are supposed to protect the law-abiding citizens of every state, namely New York State. So how is it that these legislators are going up and advocating for the rights of criminal offenders? They should be advocating for the rights of correctional officers. Correctional officers are amazing people. They should be advocating for the rights of the homeless. They should be taking all of these kabillions of dollars. Cyrus Vance gave de Blasio $18 million from criminal asset forfeiture money. You know where that money comes from? It comes from the blood of blue. They go out and they do these big raids and these narcotic busts and they sell off the Lamborghinis and the flat screen TVs and all the money goes into this fund. Guess what? Nobody's monitoring the fund, not the Assembly, not the Senate. So what Cyrus de Blasio said, I want to do a supervised release program. And Cyrus Vance said, well, I'm a bleeding heart liberal. Here's $18 million. When does the prosecutor, in the history of the United States of America, when has the prosecutor become a criminal offender advocate? That's what these people are. They're not legislators, they're criminal offender advocates. They need new titles. That's what they really are.
You know what? I want you to take a look at this video, and we're going to come back on the flip side of it, and it speaks directly to some of the issues that we're talking about people being released. Check this out.
And a judge is being criticized for the way she's handling a case where a livery cab driver was slashed and maimed. His thumb was cut off as he came to the defense of his passengers. 2 suspects were arrested, but one was not behind bars for long.
No one's found his thumb yet. Mr. De Leon's been through a lot of pain.
Questions tonight from the New York State Federation of Taxis for a judge in the Bronx who allowed one of the suspects in that brutal attack to be released. 47-year-old Richard DeLeon's thumb was completely severed, he says, as he was protecting 3 female passengers in his livery cab. Police say early morning, November 19th, 2 17-year-old suspects got into an altercation with the bodega owner whose hand was slashed as he tried to protect himself from the knife attack. Police say the 17-year-olds then ran 2 blocks away where they jumped into DeLeon's cab. He says when he tried to protect his 3 customers, one of the teens cut off his thumb. They were arrested a short time later, but a judge released one of the teens on a $200 bond, and the Federation is livid.
These are kids that could have killed 5 people in one day.
The organization showed us mock-ups of what they say were social media posts from suspect Kenneth Guzman shortly after his release, one of them bragging that he had to make it home for dinner and that he was grateful.
He's laughing at the justice system. He's laughing at the victims that he injured.
Now, just reflecting on what you just saw, a 17-year-old slashes 4 people. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, I can't believe the reports that I'm getting. Slashes 4 people, then cuts off Richard DeLeon's thumb. That's the cab driver, the livery driver, who was trying to protect his 3 passengers. They arrest him, process him, and release him so that this 17-year-old makes it home for dinner on $200 bail and what have you, enough time to get home to have dinner. What do we say about that kind of stuff?
Well, that crime is on sale in New York City.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, let's bring up that jail population graphic again. I want to look at the numbers again, because what you guys are telling me, our people in the community don't know this. They don't understand the dynamics of what's being dealt here at this point. So I asked the question, is this kind of like the Mayor de Blasio's or the governor's bail reform? Is this what it's supposed to look like?
Well, what they're saying is that bail is unaffordable, and that's why that inmates are languishing in incarceration. They absolutely have no proof that that's the case scenario. All their numbers are skewed. But what I want people to know is that that is a fallacy. Bail in the state of New York, we operate in the state of New York at the lowest national premium rate in the nation. So, for example, if your son's bond is $100,000, in the state of New York, the statutory premium would be $6,260. So, for example, let's say your bond was $5,000, which is more of an everyday sort of bond amount. That bond amount cost you $460. They're constantly talking about the Kalief Browder story. Kalief Browder was held on a VOP. It's called the violation of probation. They said that the family couldn't make the $3,000 bond that he was being held on, which would have cost him $300 in the state of New York. It's 10% for the first $3,000. So, but what I want people to know that are watching this, Tony, is that the family put more than $300 into Kalief Browder's commissary for the entire time that he was incarcerated. So that is what we call a piece of non-truth. It's a lie.
Meaning basically, even if they couldn't bail him out because of the VOP.
They couldn't bail him out. He was remanded, Elias.
With that, but he was already out on parole.
Because the argument was that he was in there for a period of time because he was being neglected by the system.
Right.
You know what happened?
The lawyers failed him. The lawyers didn't move his case. That's because legal aid is inundated with 9 kabillion cases. They have they tripled their budget for legal aid. So what they've done is they've basically socialized criminal defense in New York. People don't realize in New York that they're paying for criminal defense. If bail reform goes through, they'll also be paying for criminal release.
But it goes back to what people are arguing. This is the point on the proponents, that advocates are saying poor people can't afford bail.
Poor people shouldn't commit crime then, because crime is not a mandate. We were very poor. My family's a bunch of Cuban immigrants. Crime was not on the menu.
And the reality is they keep saying that they're there because they can't afford bail. They're there. That chart pretty much is real. Those numbers that you showed, those are real, up-to-date, as of January, numbers of the people who are in jail, the ones who are bailable, and it's just not a reality.
So who do we hold accountable for this mess?
Well, I mean, if it goes through, the only people to be held accountable would be the legislators.
Okay.
And I don't think we let any of them off the hook because, quite frankly, whether they're in Albany or whether they're in City Hall, they're all advocating for the same thing, bail reform. So whether it's a councilman, an assembly person, a senate, the governor, the mayor, it doesn't really matter. They're all advocating and saying the same thing. They're all pushing the same lie, that most of the people that are there because they can't afford bail.
Well, we're going to close on that note. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. And you have congratulations coming up. For what I understand, you're now a national representative with your organization?
Yes, I'm the Senior Vice President for the Professional Bail Agents of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Thanks again. I look forward to having you guys back.
Thank you.
Now, I agree with the mayor. The bail should be fair and equitable. No one should be locked up in any jail for any ransom. However, public safety is the most important thing, and we all know this. So, Mr. Mayor, to the city council, or even to the dog catchers, we cannot release violent offenders who may skirt the system and cause harm to our mothers, sisters, daughters, brothers, grandmothers, or anybody for that like. So stop listening to the advocates who represent special interests and the big business who you represent, who will allow violent criminals loose on our streets in order for you to lower the jail population to that 5,000 number you claim you need to get to close Rikers Island. That's just basically a land grab. Unlike the mayor, I have a definitive position on this whole issue. I'm not flip-flopping back and forth across the issue. You shouldn't either. Do your job, Mr. Mayor, and serve the people of New York.